My child, stop scrolling for just a moment. There is a reason your eyes have arrived here at this exact time. Something has been waiting patiently to reach your heart, and what you are about to hear was not placed before you by accident. Before you decide to move on, remain here until the final word, because a story has already begun unfolding behind the scenes, and only a small part of it has been revealed. What is hidden today will not remain hidden forever. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than words. There are seasons when someone walks away believing the story has ended, only to discover that heaven has quietly continued writing chapters they never expected to read. Tonight, I ask you not to rush. Stay with this message. Something extraordinary has been unfolding where your eyes could not see, and every passing moment has been leading toward a discovery that neither you nor your soulmate imagined. For a long time, your soulmate believed the distance between you had erased every trace of what once existed. They convinced themselves that memories fade, that feelings become quieter, and that unanswered questions eventually disappear beneath the weight of ordinary life. They tried to believe that moving forward would be easier than looking back. But deep within their spirit, something refused to become silent. It was not a voice they could explain. It was not a dream they could fully remember. It was simply a quiet pull that returned again and again, growing stronger with every passing day. The more they ignored it, the stronger it became. The more they distracted themselves, the more their heart whispered your name in moments when everything around them became still. Do not leave this message yet, because what happened next changed everything they believed. One evening, without telling anyone, your soulmate made a decision they never planned to make. They returned to a place connected with your story. It may have been a familiar road, an old conversation, a forgotten memory, or a place where your presence once felt alive. They were not expecting a miracle. They simply wanted answers. Yet heaven often begins its greatest work when people are only searching for the smallest truth. As they retraced old footsteps, emotions they had buried began rising one after another. Every memory carried a weight they had never allowed themselves to feel before. Every familiar sight reminded them that time had continued moving, but some parts of the heart had remained exactly where they were left. They realized something they had never admitted aloud. They had never truly stopped looking for you. Not with their eyes. Not with their thoughts. Not with their prayers. Even during moments when they smiled for others, part of their heart quietly wondered where your journey had taken you. Even while pretending everything was fine, an invisible space remained empty inside them. Pause here for another moment. Do not skip ahead. Because what they found was not what they expected. When they began asking quiet questions, they noticed something unusual. People who once spoke confidently about your story suddenly became uncertain. Conversations that once seemed complete now carried hesitation. Small details no longer matched. Pieces that had always seemed to fit together suddenly began falling apart. Your soulmate started realizing they may never have known the full truth. That realization unsettled them more deeply than they could explain. For years, they believed certain events happened for one reason. Now those reasons no longer seemed certain. Tiny moments they had ignored suddenly returned with incredible clarity. Words spoken long ago began sounding completely different. Memories they had dismissed became impossible to forget. Sometimes the greatest heartbreak is not discovering that someone left. Sometimes the deepest heartbreak is discovering they may have misunderstood why. Stay until the end. Something much greater is still waiting. As your soulmate continued searching, they encountered traces of your silent journey. They did not see every detail, but they saw enough to understand one painful reality. You had carried burdens that almost no one noticed. You smiled when people expected strength. You remained kind when your heart felt exhausted. You chose peace even when misunderstanding surrounded you. You quietly fought battles that rarely received comfort. The realization struck your soulmate with unexpected force. While they had been assuming you simply moved on, you had been carrying responsibilities, disappointments, unanswered prayers, and invisible struggles that few people recognized. The weight of that understanding settled heavily upon them. For the first time, they stopped thinking only about their own pain. They started wondering about yours. Child, listen carefully. There are seasons when heaven allows hearts to awaken through compassion instead of certainty. That awakening had begun. Every answer your soulmate uncovered created two new questions. Every truth revealed another mystery. Instead of finding closure, they found a deeper longing to understand everything they had missed. This was never the ending they imagined. As night settled around them, something unusual happened. The ordinary world became strangely quiet. The noise that normally filled their thoughts disappeared. In that silence, forgotten memories returned with extraordinary clarity. They remembered little acts of kindness they had overlooked. Small conversations they once dismissed. Simple moments where your eyes carried emotions your words never revealed. Suddenly those memories looked completely different. What once seemed ordinary now appeared deeply meaningful. What once felt insignificant now carried enormous weight. Do not leave now. Because the story is only beginning to unfold. Your soulmate realized they had measured your life by visible moments, while heaven had been working through invisible ones. They remembered times when you stood alone. Times when you remained patient. Times when you chose understanding instead of resentment. Back then, they thought those moments meant very little. Now they understood those moments revealed your true character. And that realization broke something inside them. Not because they wished to return to the past, but because they realized how easily genuine love can be misunderstood when people only see outward circumstances. There are wounds caused by harsh words. There are wounds caused by betrayal. But there are also wounds caused by incomplete understanding. Those are often the hardest to heal. Your soulmate began wondering how different everything might have been if they had simply asked one more question. If they had listened 1 minute longer. If they had remained instead of leaving. If they had trusted instead of assuming. Those questions echoed through their heart like distant bells that refused to stop ringing. Meanwhile, heaven watched quietly. Not to condemn them. Not to shame them. But to prepare them for a truth that required a humble heart. Because pride cannot receive what humility understands. Stay here. Do not skip this moment. Something extraordinary is closer than you realize. As the search continued, your soulmate encountered someone connected to your past. They expected an ordinary conversation, but instead they heard words they never imagined hearing. Those words were simple, gentle, almost whispered. Yet they carried enough weight to change everything. They learned that your kindness had reached people you never knew were watching. They discovered that while others judged quickly, you continued choosing compassion. They heard about moments when you quietly encouraged someone who had nearly lost hope. They learned about sacrifices you never spoke about. Acts of faith you never announced. Prayers you never mentioned. Suddenly your story looked entirely different. The image they had carried in their heart began transforming. Not because you had become someone new, but because they were finally seeing who you had always been. Child, understand this. Heaven often reveals hidden beauty only after hearts become ready to recognize it. Your soulmate's heart had finally reached that place. Still, one question refused to leave them. If all of this had been true, why had no one told them sooner? Why had misunderstanding become louder than truth? Why had silence hidden so much? Those questions remained unanswered. And that uncertainty became heavier than certainty itself. They returned home carrying more emotion than they brought with them. Sleep refused to come. The night felt unusually long. Every passing hour seemed filled with reflection. They replayed conversations, faces, choices, missed opportunities. Even small moments that once felt meaningless returned with astonishing detail. Then something unexpected happened. Without planning it, your soulmate whispered a prayer. Not a polished prayer. Not perfect words. Just an honest cry from a heart that finally admitted it did not know the whole story. Heaven always hears sincere hearts. Even when they speak through tears. Even when they speak through silence. Even when they can barely find the right words. And as that prayer rose quietly into the night, something began shifting that neither you nor your soulmate could yet see. Doors that seemed permanently closed were being reconsidered. Old assumptions were beginning to loosen. Hidden pieces were quietly moving into place. Yet the greatest revelation had still not arrived. Because during that same night, someone else was carrying a truth connected to your story. A truth that had remained hidden for far longer than anyone realized. That person had stayed silent out of fear. Out of regret. Out of uncertainty. But silence has a season. And every hidden truth eventually reaches its appointed moment. Your soulmate had no idea that before another sunrise, they would stand only one conversation away from learning something that would completely reshape everything they believed about you, about themselves, and about the path heaven had been guiding all along. Do not leave now. Stay until the next part. Because the next voice your soulmate hears will reveal the first piece of a heartbreaking secret that has remained hidden for far too long. And once those words are spoken, nothing in this story will ever feel the same again. My beloved child. Do not leave now. Stay with this message, because what is about to unfold was set into motion long before your eyes found these words today. A hidden conversation is waiting to be revealed, and the truth your soulmate is about to hear will shake every assumption they have carried for so long. Pause for just a little longer. Something extraordinary is drawing closer, and the next few moments hold a turning point that neither of you could have imagined. The first light of morning arrived quietly, but peace did not arrive with it. Your soulmate had barely slept. Every unanswered question from the previous night lingered like a whisper that refused to fade. Their heart was unusually heavy, not because they feared the truth, but because they sensed that the truth would demand courage. They felt as though heaven was gently guiding their steps towards something they were never meant to ignore again. As they stepped outside, nothing appeared different. The streets looked familiar. The sky stretched above them as it always had. Yet deep within their spirit, everything felt different. There was a quiet expectation, as if the ordinary day ahead carried an extraordinary appointment. Remain here until the end. Do not skip this moment, because the conversation that followed would begin opening a door that had remained closed for far too long. Your soulmate arrived at a place connected to your past, uncertain why they felt compelled to return. They were greeted by someone who had known fragments of your journey but had never spoken openly before. At first the conversation remained simple. Small memories. Familiar names. Gentle smiles. But then an unexpected silence settled between them. Sometimes silence prepares the heart for words that cannot be rushed. The person looked at your soulmate with eyes filled not with judgment, but with hesitation. It was the hesitation of someone deciding whether to reveal something that had been hidden for years. Finally, they spoke. There is something you never knew. Those simple words caused your soulmate's heart to race. They leaned forward, sensing that every answer they had searched for was about to begin unfolding. The voice continued slowly. You believed they stopped caring. Another pause. But that was never the truth. Those words echoed through your soulmate's heart like thunder across a quiet valley. For a moment, they could not respond. Every memory they had trusted suddenly felt incomplete. The person explained that during one of the most difficult seasons of your life, you had quietly chosen to protect others instead of defending yourself. You could have corrected misunderstandings. You could have explained everything. You could have spoken loudly enough for everyone to hear. But you chose silence. Not because you had nothing to say. Because you believed peace was more valuable than proving yourself right. Your soulmate lowered their eyes. For the first time, they realized that silence can sometimes be mistaken for indifference when it is actually an act of quiet strength. Stay with this message. Something even greater is waiting. The conversation continued. Your soulmate learned that while others assumed you had moved forward without looking back, there were countless evenings when you simply prayed for wisdom instead of revenge. There were days when your own heart felt exhausted, yet you still encouraged people around you. There were moments when you carried disappointment without allowing bitterness to grow. No one applauded those moments. Almost no one noticed them. But heaven noticed every single one. Your soulmate suddenly understood why peace always seemed to surround you, even during difficult times. It was not because your journey had been easy. It was because your faith had quietly become stronger than your circumstances. The realization pierced their heart. How many beautiful things had they failed to see? How many assumptions had blinded them to the truth? How many opportunities had slipped away simply because they believed what appeared on the surface? They closed their eyes. Not to escape, but because emotion had become impossible to hide. Child, listen carefully. Sometimes heaven allows delayed understanding so that when truth finally arrives, it transforms the heart completely. That transformation had begun. The person sharing these memories reached into an old box resting nearby. It was worn with time. Dust covered its edges. It looked ordinary, almost forgotten. But what rested inside carried extraordinary meaning. Your soulmate watched carefully as the lid was opened. Inside were small reminders of moments connected to your life. Nothing expensive. Nothing impressive. Just simple things that quietly preserved forgotten memories. A handwritten note. A photograph. A small object connected to a meaningful day. Your soulmate picked up the photograph with trembling hands. The image showed a smile they remembered. But now they noticed something they had completely missed before. Behind the smile were eyes carrying quiet sorrow. How had they never seen it? How had they stood so close without recognizing the weight hidden behind your kindness? The answer came gently within their heart. Because pain often hides behind the brightest smiles. Do not skip ahead. This story is moving toward something far greater. As the morning continued, another truth emerged. The person revealed that there had been moments when messages meant for your soulmate were never fully understood. Some words were delayed. Some intentions were misunderstood. Some opportunities disappeared because timing was never aligned. Your soulmate sat in complete silence. They realized that life is not always changed by dramatic events. Sometimes everything changes because of one missed conversation. One delayed decision. One misunderstanding left unresolved. That realization became almost unbearable. For years they believed destiny had simply taken a different path. Now they wondered whether heaven had been patiently waiting for hearts to become ready before revealing what had truly happened. The weight of regret tried to enter their heart. But at that very moment, another quiet realization replaced it. Regret cannot rewrite yesterday. But humility can prepare tomorrow. Those words settled deeply within them. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped asking, "Why did this happen?" Instead, they quietly asked, "What should I do now?" Heaven always moves differently when hearts begin asking the right questions. The conversation seemed complete. Your soulmate thanked the person and slowly prepared to leave. But just as they reached the doorway, they heard one final sentence. "Wait, there is still something you don't know." They turned around immediately. The room became completely silent. The person's expression changed. There was sadness in their eyes. Not ordinary sadness. The sadness of someone carrying information that would forever change another person's understanding. Your soulmate felt their heartbeat quicken again. The voice grew softer. They came back here once before you did. Everything stopped. Your soulmate could barely breathe. What do you mean? They whispered. The answer came almost like a confession. They returned quietly, hoping no one would notice. They asked about you. They wanted to know if you were truly happy. They never stayed long. They simply listened, smiled gently, and left. Your soulmate stood frozen. They had believed they were the one searching. Now they discovered that you had once searched too. Neither of you knew the other had come. Two hearts had walked the same path. At different times. Missing one another by only a small distance. Tears filled your soulmate's eyes. Not because hope had disappeared, but because they realized how close two journeys had come without ever meeting. Child. Some distances are measured in miles. Others are measured in moments. And sometimes a single missed moment can feel heavier than years. Yet heaven is never surprised by human timing. Even when people miss each other. Even when seasons seem lost. The author of every story is still writing. As your soulmate stepped outside once again, they lifted their eyes toward the sky. A quiet prayer formed within them. If there is still something you want me to understand, please show me. At that exact moment, far beyond what they could see, another piece of your story was beginning to move into place. Someone was holding evidence. Someone who had remained silent for far too long. Someone who knew why you had disappeared from that chapter of life. And before another sunset arrived, that person would finally decide to tell the whole truth.